with Jim Fitzsimmons. It's great to be with you and appreciate the opportunity to address a few topics today. First thing I wanted to talk about today was driver pay and owner-operator contract rate increases. Many of you have seen increases very recently, and others that have been announced. And we just want to make sure that all of our driving associates and owner-operators understand that we are committed to continue to raise driver pay and owner-operator contract rates. And this applies to all businesses. In the dedicated world, we tend to do that more on an account-by-account basis as the opportunities arise. And trust me, every discussion with customers is centered on driver pay. There might be other issues that we talk about, but the primary focus of contract rate increases is getting more rate to be able to give to our drivers. Over-the-road jobs, intermodal, flatbed, all of our businesses are focused on working to improve driver pay and contract rate increases. And we're grateful that we've been in an environment and position to be able to do that, and intend to continue to work that direction to see that grow. And we're grateful for each of you, and hope that you feel that from us in what you're seeing in driver pay and contract rates. The other thing that I wanted to touch on next was on safety. We are so grateful for the progress we have made in safety. I remember 3 years ago when the merger first closed, and looking at where we're at with safety and thinking back to where we were then compared to where we are today. At that time, we were in the bottom quartile compared to our peers from a safety performance perspective. Today, we're well into the top quartile of being one of the safest fleets in the country in overall safety performance. And we're so grateful for that progress. And it's taken a lot of hard work, a lot of focus, and this is an area that we can never, ever get complacent in as an organization and individually as we operate trucks out on the highway. And Jim, that's especially important going into the winter months here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. And unfortunately, we this happens every year. It always seems like it takes us about 3 or 4 weeks to, I don't know if it's getting the message out or for drivers realizing the dangers of not adjusting, speed for conditions. And, one thing I've seen personally, just looking through some of the Smart Drive videos recently, the last 2 weeks, is drivers not adjusting their speed before they hit a bridge. And you got to keep in mind, you're never going to know how big that expansion joint could be or might not be at all. But when there's a decent gap or a change from pavement to concrete going across the bridge, sometimes that's all it takes if the road's wet, or especially if the road has snow or the bridge has ice, is that little bit of a bump when you hit that expansion joint is enough to put a truck into a jackknife very easily. So
Right.
Definitely recommend when you're unsure or you're on wet roads, just back off that speed before you hit the bridge, and then accelerate back up to speed after you cross the bridge. But that's an area that just very simple adjustment you can make that'll keep you safer. But again, I'm going to say it again and again, because we want to make sure every single driver at Swift understands, if you don't feel it's safe to operate your truck, 100% you have the authority to shut that truck down. We will never force you to run when you don't feel safe, whether that's fatigue or weather. And so make sure you're making the best decision for yourself when it comes to that.
And Jim, that your comments about the bridges and such are especially important when you're empty, when the truck is empty and in windy conditions, which, those things, and hey, our drivers know it much better than I do, but they're just not as stable. And so important that we be really careful through all of that.
Yep, absolutely. And we're working on a document right now, Kevin. We should have it out this week. It's kind of a 1 page, or maybe it might be front and back, with just winter safety driving tips. We're also going to have a copy of a wind speed chart, and so that you can look at this and get an idea, depending on the speed of the wind, what do you need to do to adjust to be safe, or at what point, depending on wind speed or wind gust speed, is it just not safe to be out there at all? And we see that happening. Wyoming is a great example where if you're going through Wyoming, you definitely got to know what your weight is, and you got to know what the wind speed is, because that's a state that is known for having winds strong enough to just blow trucks right off the road or blow them right over on the side, even when they're parked,
Right.
at a truck stop.
Yeah, good point. So Jim, what about COVID? How are we doing with COVID at Swift today?
Yeah, so fortunately at Swift, we're doing better, and obviously, the United States and really across the world, we're seeing case count continues to rise, and we're having a few states that are starting to lock stuff back down, like restaurants or in-room dining. A couple states, New Mexico, Oregon, have kind of made a shift back to more of the essential businesses will remain open while others will not. And so let me just give you a few statistics here at Swift. And so our non-driver population, the positive as a percent of total headcounts, we're measuring it basically the same that the states or the U.S. or countries are measuring themselves to kind of keep a track of where they're at. And so our non-drivers are at 3.42. The great news is for our drivers and our owners, our drivers are at 1.67, so be company drivers, and our owners are at 1.43. So a much lower percentage of our drivers and owners are catching COVID or becoming positive with COVID than our non-drivers. And really, Kevin, I think what that is just the exposure. And so, no different than myself. When I go home, yeah, I've got my wife's at home, and my three kids come home and they've been out, either at school or with friends or different practices or what have you. And so the exposure is much more great, for myself once I go home. When I'm at the office, I'm not really exposed. I'm keeping my distance. Everyone's wearing their mask when they're not at their desk or in their office. And the same thing goes for our drivers. Really, when you're in your truck, it's probably one of the safest places to be right now. But it's when you go into a truck stop, a restaurant, when you go home. And really, I think when you go home is kind of where you tend to drop your guard. And with Thanksgiving coming up, keep that in mind, that you just got to do whatever you feel is right to kind of limit your exposure. And we're not going to tell you, hey, don't have Thanksgiving or don't have gatherings. But the larger the gathering, the more potential exposure you have.
Good point, Jim. So I think through the the cases that we've had here at Swift, the majority of these are taking place off work when the exposure takes place. There's been a little bit at work, but most of it's been off of work. Jim and I are both part of a task force that started meeting daily back in March, and today we meet once a week and we get an update twice a week. And we look at what's happening and we understand what's happening and we get reports on what's happening. And there's been a few cases where we've had some things happen at work, but for the most part, this has all happened off work, to Jim's point. And it's difficult to trace, but it didn't happen. The exposure did not happen at work. And so work is a very safe place, but it is important, to Jim's point, that we maintain social distancing, that we wear the masks as we are instructed to do by our local authorities and in each locality. But it's important to take those kind of steps to continue to be safe.
Definitely. Let me hit on one other issue, Kevin. Benefits and open enrollment. And so I just want to put this out there because we had a lot of issues with it, and I just wanted to share what happened. And so when the enrollments opened up, unfortunately, the link that was on the driver portal was somehow deleted. Now, just wanted everyone to know. So if you tried to go in there and you couldn't get in there, try again. That was fixed yesterday. Unfortunately, when they did the testing, everything worked great. When they went live, somehow that link got deleted, and we don't know how it got deleted, but it did. And so now that link is back up. But unfortunately, Internet Explorer does not work on this link. And so you either have to have Google Chrome or Firefox to use that link. But like I said, if you had a problem, you could get back in there, try it again today. It should work. If you have problems getting in there or making changes or whatever it might be, or you just have questions that you can't get answered on the website, you can call the number below, and our Swift benefits team will help you through that. The November 25th is the last date for open enrollment. So, make sure you get that done by November 25th, because once that date closes, Swift doesn't have the ability to extend that time. So very critical that you get it done before then.
Good point, Jim. And and we don't have the ability at Swift to do that. In other words, because there are regulations or government regulations around those kind of things, and so companies do not have choices in how to handle that. So encourage you to do that. Call that number, hit that website if you have problems. Chrome or Firefox are just apps you can download onto your device if you need to, and then use them like as a browser, as a search engine, and go into the website to be able to get to where you need. And hey, we apologize for the problems. Again, don't know what drove them, as Jim mentioned, but we are resolving. And
yeah, and if you continue to have problems where you can't get through on your if you're using your cell phone, or if you have a laptop and you can't get it to work, just stop by any one of our terminals and ask somebody in the office, and we'll make sure we get you into that link and get you taken care of.
Thanks, Jim. I just wanted to wrap up with a couple of thoughts. Any other thoughts, Jim, that you wanted to share with the group today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Well, hey, we appreciate everybody. We appreciate all of you. We're very fortunate to be in the freight environment that we're in today. We're seeing strong demand still through the holidays here. As we're talking to our customers, they are telling us, really with rare exception, they're telling us that they're anticipating this strong demand to continue well through, at least through Q1, first quarter of 2021, in other words, and even well beyond into, and maybe through all of 2021. It depends on what happens with supply chains and the economy and demand and those kind of things. But hey, that's very positive for us, and we're excited about that and appreciative, and we're going to work very hard to take advantage of that from the standpoint of making sure we have plenty of loads. For those of you who have been through a few cycles, of a year, like Jim and I have been, how there are times of year when it gets a little bit slower, and not that we won't see that at all next year, but we're optimistic that we won't see as much of it perhaps. And so I would just encourage you to continue to stay focused on being safe and being productive through the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and other holidays, and make sure that you stay focused on that. And we think there's going to be plenty of freight to do that. And so, hey, that will bode really well for all of us. We appreciate all of you. Wish you and your families well. Hope that you stay safe. Hope that you stay focused on the things that you need to. Hope that you have a great Thanksgiving. And again, be careful from a COVID perspective. Be careful as you drive, and just enjoy the holidays. And let's make sure that we stay focused on continuing to work. Everybody have a great day. We appreciate all of you.
Thanks, everyone.